Golic and Smetty here. All right, welcome to another edition of Golic and Smetty. I'm Mike Golic Sr. That's Jessica Smetana. We have been doing this now for more than a few episodes, and I think I finally have the first bone to pick with you, Jess.
Oh, no. What did I do?
Well, it had to happen sooner or later. We know that. So as we're getting ready to tape this pod, Jess texted me and said, listen, I had a prior engagement. DraftKings, they took us to lunch down here in Miami, and, you wanted to go to that, and understandable. And you said Miami traffic, which sucks, by
Awful,
the way.
terrible
When
traffic.
I was down there for the Super Bowl, I wanted to explode with what was going on down there. It was horrific.
It's gotten worse, too, because everyone has moved here. Yeah.
I'm sorry I digressed there. But so you went out to dinner, you and the gang with the DraftKings people went to a great restaurant, and everyone is having a drink. And what did you tell me when you first got on air with me?
Well, I told you I didn't order anything to drink because I knew we had to do this show. And Mike, you were playing hurt last week. I felt like it was my duty to be on top of it this week so we could both be, on an equal playing field. I didn't want to play hurt this week, even though you were hurt last week from the wedding. So I didn't order anything, even though the martini, there was an espresso martini that was calling my name, but it was a 2:00 lunch. I couldn't drink a martini, come back here, and then record the show with you. It would be a disaster.
Yes, you could. You know what? Your actions were very professional, and dare I say, I'm highly disappointed. I'm highly disappointed that you didn't partake. And then now the difference is if you drove, I understand. But if you Ubered, then I would have really hoped you would have partaken a few times. Boy, that could only add to the fun of the show, right?
Yeah, but I'd probably be asleep right now. That's the problem. We went to Smith and Walensky, okay? So I had burgers. We got apps, like DraftKings hooked it up. I mean, it was amazing. And I ordered dessert, Mike. It was like a 4-course meal. I would be passed out asleep right now if I had anything to drink.
Oh, when you said that, I felt like, again, because you're the age of my daughter, Sydney, that I was disappointed in my daughter when I heard you didn't get it. How bad is that? I'm so disappointed, Jess, you didn't get hammered at lunch.
This is why I like doing the show with you, Mike. And I told you, like, if Stugatz were there, he would have had a drink. But actually, Stugatz ditched it. He would never go.
Well, that's the most known thing of all time, that he would ditch it. And it's great. Hey, great, you DraftKings guy. Go down and take everybody out to lunch there. Screw the guy sitting up here in Arizona by himself, all right? I'll just go make me a bologna and cheese sandwich, after we're done here. I'm good. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. My God, can you tell I'm bitter?
A little bit. I mean, you just come to Miami, Mike, anytime. I'll take you out.
Well, I appreciate that. I am going to get down there because as we start to go video with this thing, we're going to be in the same spot. As I said, we're going to do an entire pod while you're baking. It'll be some about baking, but we'll do an entire pod, sports, in and out of sports, whatever. Mm-hmm. But we're going to bake and we're going to eat. So I look forward to that. So, all right, we're going to have my old buddy Sean Salisbury join us in a little bit to break down the draft. And I'm going to get into him with a little NBA as well. He does a show down in Houston, so he covers everything, and he was a big basketball guy as well. So that's coming up in a bit. We'll get our football fix in. But, Jess, I watched F1 again. As we've discussed, I'm getting into this a lot. It was in Italy. Mm-hmm. And you know what I liked is I start watching it the day or so before the qualifying. And in this one, I hadn't seen it before. They had a sprint race, 21 laps or whatever.
Yes.
Hey, that was very cool. All right, so I like that. But here's my question. I started learning terms, and the one that I had to start looking up, DRS.
DRS. I'm glad you asked.
Draft reduction system, right?
It's drag reduction system.
Drag reduction system.
It is draft week, though, so I understand.
Exactly. So let me see if I understand this correctly now.
Okay.
And all you that are F1 fans out there, bear with me. Those of you who aren't F1 fans, you should become F1 fans because it's actually a lot of fun to watch. There are zones in the track. Most have one zone. I think this one had 2 zones, where if you are trailing a car by under 1 second and you're in this zone, you can engage the drag reduction system, which sounds just like it is. It reduces the drag, so you're able to go about 10 to 12 miles an hour faster, and that's kind of a passing zone where you can make a move. Am I correct in all that explanation?
You're correct. Essentially, like the rear wing of the car is adjustable. So the rear wing actually goes down, and then you can go faster because there's less drag. So you're able to have a little bit more pace and overtake.
So I have a couple of questions here. If it's just two cars were involved, let's start with just two cars. They're in that zone. The car behind is within a second, and he can engage that drag reduction system. Mm-hmm. The guy in front of him, can he engage that?
No, unless he's a second behind the car in front of him.
I mean,
in the zone.
So while I understand from a fan's point, it can make it interesting because that's like a quote unquote passing zone.
Right.
If I'm one of the drivers, I'm thinking this is bullshit.
No,
I can't
drive faster.
Oh, but I can't do. Wait, I'm drive faster. I'm in front of this guy. I'm leading him, and now if he's in this special friggin' zone, he can advantage to drive faster to pass me.
Right, but then you can, if you're that close, you can get back in DRS yourself and pass them. But that's why it's really important to maintain more than a second ahead of the car behind you, so you don't put yourself in that position. But there's been races where, like this season, where like Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen have like exchanged places because they both keep getting, DRS and overtaking one another. So it does make it more exciting. And Mike, overtaking fans have been complaining for years that there's not enough
of it. Okay.
Which is why they have DRS, which is why they had all these regulations this year.
Right.
Cars and yada yada.
Okay. All right. So again, because they want to engage fans more, I understand the move. I understand that then, because it does make it more exciting when you can see that. Now, how about if there are four cars within that zone, and say the last car, the fourth car, is within a second of the car in front of them, but not two cars in front of him. Can he only pass that one car in the DRS, or can he pass two cars?
Okay, so in this hypothetical situation, like these cars, so the DRS zone isn't that big.
That long? Okay.
It'd be like that many cars usually, but you can, as long as you're a second behind, your DRS is engaged. I might be wrong about that because I'm also not an F1 expert, but I think as long as you're a second behind, you can have DRS. Okay,
all right. I was wondering about that. And then lastly, it seems to me, now I picked up F1 and I knew about F1 when Lewis Hamilton was the man.
Right.
He
still is.
But obviously the cars aren't, because wasn't it kind of whoever the head of Mercedes is who is at these races actually apologized to Lewis Hamilton saying the car is not worthy of you? I mean, okay, he may be phenomenal, but is his reign over because of the new rules out here?
Okay, so you're talking about Toto Wolff, who is the head of Mercedes. He's like the team principal. I think he also owns a stake in Mercedes Racing. So Toto apologized to Lewis Hamilton after the race because Lewis did not have the pace this weekend to keep up and to stay in the points, which is position 1 through 10. You get points for the championship and for the Constructors' Cup. So Toto apologized to Lewis. Now, in the meantime, George Russell finished, I believe, in fourth.
Yeah.
So one of the Mercedes cars did okay, and Lewis Hamilton's car didn't do okay. And so, I don't know, some people, Mike, were like, Toto he's being too nice to Lewis. Like, Lewis just didn't have a good weekend, and the car's just not very fast. But George Russell seems to be getting a lot more out of this car.
Right.
There's some.
Which is it? Yes, I know you're a Hamilton fan, but let's try and be unbiased.
I don't know. So I don't know enough about cars to really know what's going on. I've read a lot about it, and it seems like it's true that the car is not as fast as the other cars. It cannot keep up. There's this thing happening with the car called porpoising, which means that it's like shaking up and down.
Right.
Right. I mean, I don't know. I think a porpoise is like a dolphin. I don't even know what any of this means. I just am learning about this for the first time, just like you. But anyways, so the car is not very fast, and especially when the car is it's called dirty air, which means that the car is behind other cars, and you're not getting clean air like through the car, so you can't go as fast as you would be if you had clean air. The car is really bad in that. So Lewis was never able to qualify near the top this weekend, and he wasn't able to do well in the sprint race, and therefore he wasn't able to do well in the actual race on Sunday, whereas Russell had a better qualifying time, so he was able to get more clean air and finish higher. So I don't know. I think Mercedes has easily, no question, two of the best drivers on the grid. Probably not the best two, because I think Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc are the best two right now, especially this season. But they're both excellent drivers. So for them to not be able to finish in the top three, or they've had a couple top five finishes this year, both of them, that's not good for Mercedes. Who was the former, 8-time champions, championships in a row of the Constructors' Cup, right? So I think it's probably the car.
Well, let's also be fair. Lewis Hamilton got to the podium in the first week because the two cars in front of him, begged out,
exploded,
right? Yeah. Didn't finish. So that helps you get on the podium. So if I have it correctly, you're saying Lewis Hamilton is a has-been and he's through.
No, that is not what I'm saying at all. No, so Mercedes, this is what happened last season too. So there's all of these, this takes a little bit of explaining. I'm going to try to explain it the best I can.
You go ahead.
There were all of these new rules put in place for this car, for this season's car. So every year, basically, these teams rebuild the cars to the specifications of Formula One's, racing guidance and governance. And you have to have things be a certain size and weigh a certain amount and look a certain way and be a certain way. But there's variance within that to how you get a competitive car within the rules. So this season, in particular, the cars are completely different than last season because Formula One wanted to make a concerted effort to have the cars be able to overtake more, to make the races more exciting. So Mercedes and all the other teams, to be fair, had to basically rebuild their cars. Some teams' rebuilds did really well, like Ferraris seems to be really good. Red Bull seems to be really good, minus the issues that they've had in two races now where they've had to retire cars towards the end of the race. But Mercedes doesn't look to be as competitive. Now, if you think back to last season when Mercedes was developing this season's car, Mercedes was pushing really hard to get Lewis Hamilton to win his 8th championship against Max Verstappen. So the last half of the 2021 season, Mercedes was making a lot of altercations to last season's car because they thought they had the championship within their grasp, which they did. Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen were tied with points going into the final race of the season, in which there was then a hugely controversial decision made in the final lap of the race, and Max Verstappen won by seconds. He overtook Lewis Hamilton in the last lap of the race and won the championship. But Mercedes was right there, Mike. They almost had it. So I think there's people who think that because Mercedes was so focused on Lewis winning last season, they might have taken away some resources from having a competitive car when this season started. And so now they're playing catch up, whereas some of the other cars seem to have taken more time. And you're seeing Haas suddenly has a competitive car for the first time in years because they might have taken more time last year to do it because they knew they weren't going to be competitive at all. So there's been a huge shift, I suppose, from last season to this season in the way that the cars are made and what they look like and how they work, and to the advantage of some like Ferrari and to the disadvantage of Mercedes. And I know that there are probably F1 fans listening that are going to get in a pedantic argument with me about the way I explained that, but I did the best I could. We're all fans here.
Yeah. Hey, listen, just hit us both on Twitter. We're learning.
Oh, they will. Trust me, Mike. They will hit me on Twitter. The other thing, Mike, the sprint race thing, that's a relatively new thing. They did it, I think, 3 times last season. I think there's a lot of old school Formula One fans who are not sold on it because they think it's a little gimmicky. It's oh, you're throwing in this extra thing. It's not a real race, So
what? It's fun to watch.
They're averse to change. I agree. I think the sprint race is fun. It's super exciting. 20 laps as fast as you can go. And, there's basically no pitting for most of their cars. You're just going as fast as you can for 20 laps on the same set of tires. And the winner wins, and then they get to start in, first place for the next race.
I thought it was cool. Right, we didn't even mention Verstappen won. It's Leclerc and Verstappen. It's their world right now between the two of them trading off. Lewis Hamilton, obviously, I was just kidding about him being through. We'll see what they can do. I do remember that obviously, and I think in 21 he signed a 2-year extension at $70 million a year, which I do think, as we segue to football, probably in another 3 or 4 years, the top quarterbacks in the NFL will be making 70 a year. They're sitting at 40 now, but we'll see if they can get up to Lewis Hamilton area as we transition to football.
Well, yes, Mike, and the next race for Formula One is here in Miami. I'm hoping to attend. Still waiting to find out if I'm getting a credential or not. But I'll let you know what it's like up close and in person. So the next time that we want to go to a race, you, me, and Ben, I'll give you a little heads up.
I hope you can, because I tried as well. My God, I mean, holy smokes! I mean, forgetting even the price, because I don't care. I'll pay a price, but wow, it's tough to get stuff. That's
Yeah.
for sure. It really is. So we'll see. I hope you can make it down there as well, and that's in May, which we'll obviously be talking about it then. But it's time to do a little football talk.
All right, let's do it.
All right, Jess, joining us now. Listen, one of my favorites. Right now, he's doing morning radio for Sports Talk KBME 790 in Houston. But well before that, Sean and I, as seniors in high school, were on the same High School All-American magazine. Then we played against one another. Sean was a quarterback at USC, and I played at Notre Dame. Then we played against each other on our various teams in the NFL. Then we were teammates at ESPN for a number of years. And we have just kept touch over the years. So Sean and I have known each other since 1981. Well, Jess, before you were born. And
That's before my parents even got married.
oh, just
Watch
stop
it.
it, Jess. Yeah,
Watch
exactly. So Sean, obviously, it's always great talking to you. I love coming on your show, and I appreciate you coming on Golic and Smetty here. Before we even get into the draft, something, I know you were undrafted. I was a 10th rounder. So that first day of the draft does nothing for us because we were never really involved in it. But let's go back, because Jess is a 16 grad at Notre Dame as well. So we like to flaunt that around. You grew up in California, but Notre Dame did recruit you. You ended up going to USC. Was there ever a thought for you of leaving California and going to ND, or no?
There was, Mike, and it's great to be on with you. And I think back when we were parade All-Americans and we made first team All-American, that nowadays with all this social media, imagine, I like to convince myself that we'd have been crushing the name, image, and
NIL. Oh, absolutely.
Just born way too soon, Jess. So we're sorry about that. But you know what, Mike, I did. When I took my recruiting visit, first of all, it was cold, but I loved it. I grew up, it was the history which drew me there at first. Because, growing up in Southern California, why do people want to go to Notre Dame? And, well, you want to go to Notre Dame because that's all I remember growing up, Southern Cal, Notre Dame on TV. And the history of it was intriguing to me. And then when I got on the plane to fly back there, the second I got off the plane, they put me, when I got into South Bend and on campus, Mike, it was at 17 years old, it's overwhelming, especially if you're somebody who didn't grow up around it, right? Just seeing it on TV and talking to people who had, been Notre Dame fans. And then they took me on campus and then immediately went to the bookstore. I was overwhelmed, and they start walking around and talking about the history of the university and Touchdown Jesus and the Golden Dome. I'll put it to you this way. Had SC not have been my team between BYU and Notre Dame, if I was going to leave the state, and go any farther than 1,000 miles, Notre Dame would have been it. I loved it. And that's why, for me, while our tradition and we joke about it, I still think it's the best, most respectful rivalry in college football. There was never a time that I had that, I hate Notre Dame. When you're playing, you want to beat them, but there's still to this day, I root for, guys like you and my friends that played there. But I did. It was hard on me. And they were in the middle of the coaching switch from Divine to Jerry Faust, and to talk about an overwhelming job going from Moeller High School to Notre Dame a little bit, right? So, but I'll never forget. I'll tell you this quick story, Mike, because you'll appreciate it. When they made the transformation to another coach, to Jerry Faust, he was all that energy, as you well know, having been there with him. And he came onto my campus, and we were getting ready for basketball practice because football season was over. And I was out there, and he comes into my gym, and we're just getting ready to warm up, but nobody's in the gym yet but me. And so I'm warming up. He goes, "Hey, Sean," when that voice only Coach Faust. He says, "If I make a half-court shot before you're coming to Notre Dame." I kind of rolled my eyes like, "Give me a break. I'm a basketball player before a football player," and laughed at 17, arrogant as hell. I'm going to kill him. First shot I make, he goes, "You go first." And I missed it off the back heel of the rim from the side part of the half court. The next one I missed again, and he missed his second one. I missed a third one, and he knocked it down nothing but net.
No.
Mike, I'm telling you, he shook my hand, walked out of the gym quickly like he does. You know, it seemed like he was always urgent. And I didn't see him again. He went out and went to my thing. He goes, I'll see you at Notre Dame. I'll call you. We talked. Gone. Went in to see my high school coach and was gone. And I still didn't go to Notre Dame. But yeah, Mike, it was my favorite trip because I was so enamored with the history of Notre Dame and all the great players. I knew more about the history of Notre Dame probably than I did Southern Cal, the Trojans. But yeah, it was close, but I stayed with the one that I had grown up loving a little bit more.
Well, it's a better history. I mean, Notre Dame is just one of those iconic schools, unlike Southern Cal.
Oh, wow. She's coming in hard there.
Sean,
she did. Dropping the hammer already?
You said it's like a respectful rivalry, but I mean, maybe that's because you went to Southern Cal before the Bush push, because that was like my first college football memory with Notre Dame, because I think I was probably in like, I don't know, 5th grade at the time. Yeah. So that broke my heart. So I have hated Southern Cal. Like I have all the animosity to that.
I was at that game. It was as a fan. We flew into Chicago and a bunch of us went in and went there and tailgated. And I'll never forget, was on the field and Charlie Weiss calls me over to the end zone during warmups and says, you know, Sean, we're beating you guys today. And I said, Charlie, really? I said, I love it. He goes, but we are. And we talked for about 15 minutes. I'm walking away. He goes, we are going to beat you today. And that was a great football game, man. Some margin up and down the field. And it ended right because I didn't see a push, Jess. So to me, in your 5th grade, get that out of your mind. There was no cheat there. Didn't exist. I saw a liner trip into the back of Reggie.
It sounds like Charlie Weiss just jinxed the entire football team. Like I blame Charlie Weiss for a lot, but I feel like I could definitely blame him for this. Why is he talking smack before the game's even over?
That's what Charlie did. So Charlie talks.
Oh, he let me know, Sean, we're winning today.
You know, and Jess, Sean is right. It was a kind of a respectful rivalry because we weren't close to one another by proximity where some of these others are, and we were all, you know, highly recruited guys that were recruited at both places, and some, you know, split and went the other way. So it kind of was. Don't get me wrong. Listen, there was, you know, we got after it. I mean, my brother's year in '77 when they won the title, that's when they came out in the Trojan horse at Notre Dame and they pulled out the green jerseys. But that Bush push, I hated it just because as a defensive player, I thought it's such bullshit that you can push, you can shove somebody from behind into the end zone. And then for a while they tried to outlaw it, but never called it. So then just said, screw it. You can do it now. And I thought, how ridiculous is this? But listen, but you remember that game. It wasn't even the push. It was the pass along the sideline that got
down the left sideline on SC sideline that Liner threw up into the hole on a little drop shot. That you're so right. Everybody points to that. It's like, damn, it was like I go back to the Red Sox. It wasn't the Carlton Fisk home run in '75.
Right.
It was the Bernie Carbo home run that got him to be able to get a shot to Carlton Fisk into the center field well. But Mike, and it was right there along that side. And you're right. And of course, it was an illegal play on the Bush push.
Yeah.
But we ain't giving that shit back.
No, hell no.
With the rivalry. And when I say respectful and the passion, Jess, Mike, you know this. We wanted to kill each other. We're on the field. And it was just the way they treated like families. Like when you tailgated after, like even when I went there for that game, we were tailgating with Notre Dame alum and fans as well. And my mom and dad always went back to South Bend to attend that game. They'd stay in Chicago and they'd go to that game. And at no time was there ever you're worried about there's going to be a fist fight in the parking lot. It was always passionate, but there was respect, and it still exists that day. Now, listen, you're not supposed to love each other while you're playing, but it's okay to try to beat each other's brains in and then shake hands and hug afterwards, because you are right. So many of us, from you and me to Del Rio to Scott Groom to Blair Keel we can go on and on with the list. Alan Pinkett's, we're getting recruited by both, and it was just a matter of which one proximity or which one you grew up loving more.
So the last one from the college aspect, and let's bring it into today. And you would have had way more opportunity because you were in California. Back then, whatever the big thing was, like around your college, what would have been, because being the star quarterback, what would have been the NIL? What do you think you could have gotten back in '81 if NIL was going on while we went to school?
An apple, a bullet, and a cigarette, man. That's about no. You know what, Mike? Considering you know, because when you were the SC quarterback, and this is not air, but you know, it was just
Yeah.
when you were the SC quarterback. In truth, at that time, it was Showtime, the Dodgers, and you were
Yeah.
one of the bigger stars in town, especially if you were winning and being recruited like we were. Fortunately, I don't know what it would have been in today's money, but I can tell you this: if USC isn't at the top every year in name, image, and likeness, with all the with all the reach there, right? And with the alum, I would imagine, I'm going to put it in today's terms, and you would have made a lot too, but as a quarterback at Southern Cal, I would imagine in today's terms, it would be a couple as a number one, quarterback recruited in the country, probably going in a $2 to $3 million start.
What
just
product?
Just to be there.
What product do you think, or multiple products back then? What was big?
It would have, you start to think about. Well, it wasn't. The cell phones weren't involved.
No.
I don't know what kind of technology. Restaurants. It would have been. The Playboy Mansion was a big part. The Los Angeles Dr. Bus was a big contributor.
We definitely had that in South Bend.
Real estate,
Hollywood, yeah.
Yeah, and it was, and it was overwhelming, but I sure as hell wasn't giving it back either. So it was so Hollywood. But I would imagine then, Mike, you could probably, if you put it in today's dollars, it would have been nice, because I know you were sitting there saying, am I going to write a fake check to get a pizza on a Monday night with the fellas? My senior year, or before we left, because we didn't leave early then, right? For the draft, is I was making $486 a month scholarship check and living off campus. So we had to pay. I lived with a buddy. We had to pay rent. So by the end of it, you're like, how am I going to milk this $9 for a Domino's Monday night pizza, 2 for $7, right? So it would have been nice to see, but I love the guys are getting paid and doing it all. It would have just been nice to go retroactive for a second and see what it would have been like.
God, that would have been so cool. That would have been.
What would you, Mike? What would in Notre Dame area? What would it have been like? Even though it's a
Rocco's
religious
Pizza.
school in the West.
Yeah, it would have been restaurants. Same way.
Right.
I mean, you can find anything to eat in the Midwest that'll get you big and fat. So that's what I ate all the time.
The
Pizza
Backer.
Restaurants, the Backer. I would have had to have been my senior year when I turned 21. Probably the Linebacker, which is the iconic bar that is there. So at that point, I would have taken free alcohol, which
clothing, all that stuff. Winter wear, right?
It's kind of getting free alcohol anyway, but that's a whole other
there's
story.
No doubt.
So all right, we won't live in the past anymore.
Why not?
I know it's so much fun at times, but we don't want to be those old guys on the lawn, though.
No doubt.
Get off my lawn, So
right.
Your quarterbacking days and then going through the NFL, and we have seen how the quarterback position has evolved over the years. What's been, do you think, of what we see now in the game, the biggest or the best improvement from the quarterback position? Because you work with high school quarterbacks as well.
Right.
And so today's quarterbacking is so different. So how does that evolution go?
So far ahead of the game, Mike, when it comes to the reps and the mechanics, because if you're like me, you play, and I know this, you wrestle, play sport to sport to sport. I didn't ever have a private lesson in my life. And 7-on-7 lasted about 3 weeks in the summer for us. Now it's, man, you're training a guy, you got to fit training sessions into their 7-on-7, rep after rep, which can be damaging because mechanics, I'll tell you where mechanics aren't good, is in 7-on-7. Matter of fact, they'll tear the shit out of your mechanics. You got to go rebuild and repair, right? But for me, it's the mechanics and the constant grind on the little things. It's not just how far can you throw it. It's teaching guys. I was never told until I got a guy who had been a quarterback before me at my high school about throwing people open. You felt like your arm was strong enough. So we get big, strong, physical specimens that now, and I train my guys to approach it like if you're a 6'4", 220 guy, and I think measurables are overrated at quarterback, to learn how to throw and play the position as if you don't have the physical skills that everybody thinks you got, meaning anticipate like Breeze, and let's assume you don't have the strongest arm like Drew Brees, and throw accurate and throw on time. To me, it's the mechanics grind and the private training that guys get on a daily basis, and they're willing to spend a lot of money for it. But also, Mike, it's the implementation of this RPO and the guys who now, we're no longer looking at a 6'6", 230 guy and say, you're an outside linebacker. And I was big before my time, but we're turning the Josh Allens and these guys into that their feet are just as deadly, which creates full field stuff. And I think now when I watch my high school guys, a lot of these guys are full field. There was a time when we started to make the transition that you're working half the field and the mental grind. I see guys that are far more ahead, even though I can't stand when they snap their head to the sidelines, and 11 guys, it drives me nuts. But I think with a lot of off-season training, they're just reps ahead by the time they get there. We don't expect a freshman to wait 2 years. The freshman's a lot of time the best quarterback on the team. So the reps they're getting and the training they're getting at a 7th grade. I was training a kid, Mike, who's 7. His name's Maverick, 7. And he drops 3 steps back like he did a 3-step drop better than a couple of high school kids. I'm not kidding you.
Wait, his name is Maverick?
Maverick, and he's got to be great, right?
He's got to be a quarter.
He's probably already signed
Exactly.
an NIL deal.
And I told his dad that.
God.
I said, listen, his name's Maverick, and he can do a 3-step drop like this at 7. Then I can't imagine the pressure that's going to be on him when he's 15 and everybody's talking Maverick's your quarterback, right? So it's just the reps and the attention to detail now that we have. And then the guys are just freakish. But it doesn't mean that they're better than Marino or Elway. They just have more access to. And you and I had to get the thing that we'd had to wind the tape. I can send you a video of a quarterback of mine, and you can study 25 plays on a text message from Huddle like that. It's the instantaneous stuff and we get information back so quickly on the urgent. You don't have to wait 3 days till a can of tape comes in to study your next opponent.
When you're doing draft evaluations, Sean, and just to go back to Notre Dame and USC for a second, do you show any bias towards players that might have gone to SC? Because I do it all the time with Notre Dame players. Like, I think Kyle Hamilton is the best safety to have ever walked the planet Earth because I know him from Notre Dame.
Right.
I'm wondering if you do the same thing.
He's a really good player. You know what? Maybe it's like I almost treat SC like I did my kids. I'm harder on them.
Right.
I expect more, and I don't know. I do. Like I've always thought Darnold had a chance to be a player, and while I thought he is great, great skill set, I'm tired of the potential talk. Right? I want production. So I'm probably just, while I love my Trojans, I'm still leery, and I probably grade them, and it's probably not fair either. Grade them harder. I do, and you're right about Hamilton. What a special high IQ football anticipation guy. So I wouldn't say I'm easier on him. I'm the teacher that's a little bit harder on the guys where my expectations are. And we've been through a time when there's been some struggles at positions. So no, I'm the other way. I'm a little harder on SE. And I have no problem on my show or when we're doing something of being critical of guys and fair. I try to be fair, but I have no problem being critical of a guy that went to my school. Maybe I'm partial if it's 6 and 1/2 dozen the other, but now I expect more out of the Trojans than I do anybody else for whatever reason. And that's obviously because I played there.
Well, you're also a professional. Like, I'm not fair or impartial. Like, I see Ian Book get drafted in the 3rd round, and I'm like, well, he's going to be the next Drew Brees. So
right. Well, that's how you're supposed to feel. And listen, some would argue that I know anything about being professional, but I'll take the compliment. Thank you.
Listen, that's why they say fan short for fanatic, Jess.
That's
so,
right.
That's what fans want to think about.
Mike, what do you do? Do you do that, Mike? You're a little harder, right?
Yes. I completely agree because people in the business we're in now, people are going to expect you to be softer on your guys. So just like you said, when I coach my kids, people say, oh, he's coaching his kids, he's going to be easier on them. So you go the other way. And sometimes you're too hard on them,
right?
Because you want that. You don't want that said about it. So I think it's the same thing with the alma mater. I agree.
Yeah. And I'm not willing to lose credibility on our football talk to either kiss the ass of somebody I know or throw some hot take against the wall because it looks good on Twitter or on a show. I'm not willing to do that. And if it means the SC guy's a little disappointed, Sean, you were awfully hard on me. Well, take it as a compliment because my expectations were higher for him anyway, whether they should be or not.
Yeah, then go prove me wrong.
Right.
I'm with you. We kind of had that professional responsibility. So then in looking at, because the draft, listen, as hard as it is for me as a D lineman to admit, the league's built around the quarterback. And, my wife even said the other day, why doesn't this draft seem like it's got any teeth? And I said, because there's no franchise quarterback we're talking about. Now, we don't know because this stat blew me away. I believe it was 2005 to 2017. There were 35 first-round quarterbacks taken in that area there of years and players, and only 2 are on their original team, Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes. So we know what a crapshoot it's going to be. But this year, Sean, it seems like we're really down on these quarterbacks. Should we be, or are we missing something that one can maybe turn into something?
And Mike, it's such a great point, because the truth is statistics are going to say one's going to be a starter for a decade, probably. And two of them are going to be okay and may journeyman, switch a few teams. And one may be out of the league in 6 years looking for who knows. I mean, if you talk about the four that we have at the top, right? And we know that in Mike, and even with all the stuff we used to do on television and still do an evaluation, I still think it's the toughest position to evaluate in sports, because we don't know from high school to college and college to pro with the grown men and how you're going to do with a $130 going a game, how you're going to handle failure, all those things because in college, the windows are bigger too. We're throwing a coffee can size windows in the NFL. And if you're late, you're done. And that defensive end can outrun you and the corner can anticipate everything. So tough to evaluate. But for me, Mike, you're exactly right, is we don't have Andrew Luck sitting at the top of it where he's a no-brainer first pick. And we don't even know, in truth, we don't even have the first pick solidified to the point where there's a no-brainer. He's the top. I mean, it could be Walker. It could be two of the offensive linemen. It could be Sauce Gardner could be the second pick in the corner. So we don't, even in the first five guys, we're not real sure if it's Hutchinson or somebody else. So with that in mind, with the quarterback, Mike, I think it comes down to, we want to be able to say that guy, Andrew Luck, that guy, Troy Aikman, that guy always a starter. Trevor Lawrence tomorrow, the second he gets off the plane from being drafted, he's the starter at OTAs. We don't have that here. They're all, they're all projects. I don't see one and I've looked at them a lot, see one that, unless Carolina drafts one and Darnold again urinates down his leg and they don't play well and you got to throw him in game 3, but it's still going to be difficult. I don't see one guy that walks in here and changes a franchise tomorrow. I do see guys with, and they all have ifs, Mike. I wouldn't take one in the first 10 unless you're overly desperate. And that's not a knock on them. It's just a fact, is I don't like a lot of ifs at that. If I got a lot of ifs talking about my franchise quarterback, I can't draft him. I'll go get another player and wait or do something else. So with that in mind, they all have that by their name. Corral has his strengths. I love his dual threat ability, and he's tough, and I love his story. Kenny Pickett, probably the best pure thrower, yet the rawest thrower is Willis, and he has a monster skill set. And then you got, Ritter, who seems mature and a leader and feels like he's been around college football for a while, great feet. So they all have something to like, but they all have a lot of things that you question. I mean, when you combine them all. So for me, it's the fact that we don't have one. I'll be shocked if on opening day, one of these guys is starting. Be shocked when Mayfield and Darnold, we expect those guys to start from the get-go, right? Right. Lamar was about Josh Allen, all of them. So it doesn't mean 3 years from now, we're not going to be doing a podcast, you and I and Jess, saying, look at that, man, Malik Willis turned into a Pro Bowler. But the reason it's not sexy, the reason why, because we don't see a guy walking off campus and taking over a franchise like Peyton Manning, and that we're going to let him play through it, and he's still going to be a stud. All of them projects, to the point that if you have to play him now, you are in a very desperate situation.
Well, you brought up Trevor Lawrence, who was the first overall pick last year, and then obviously started at Jacksonville amidst a lot of coaching turmoil with Urban Meyer, who then got fired. So I'm curious if you expect him to be the quarterback that he was expected to be when he was drafted first overall, or if you think he has a rougher road ahead.
Yeah, Jess, I think he's a really good player, man, and can be great. I don't think he was, let's put it this way. He was not only battling defenses and a team that wasn't very good with a lot of weapons, but he also had to, in my opinion, overcome what looked to me to be very, not only dysfunctional and a little bit toxic there, but had to overcome. When you got to overcome your own coaching staff, it's a bad thing. It is a bad thing when they're not on the same page and one wants this, one wants that. He will be better coached and better prepared with Doug Peterson on the offensive side of the ball. I expect Trevor Lawrence, just like I said on day one, and he made some strides, but he also had some moments. The best quarterbacks I've ever seen in my life that were drafted up there or anywhere get kicked in the teeth. Manning, 28 interceptions. Troy Aikman, like 1-11 start. Elway get booed. And they're able to put the rearview mirror aside, look out the windshield and say, it's okay. This is what I needed. And then the light switch goes on. Lawrence has that ability. He'll be better coach. I don't know if he's going to be in the next year. They got to put some players around him, but you are going to see significant growth. I think they're a surprise team this year. I think they're a team, if this draft goes like they want, that put it this way, they're not going to be picking first or second in the league next year. They will not be picking in the top 3 in the league. I think they're a 7-win type team, and a lot of it will be because that quarterback makes incredible strides. He's got a demeanor that I love. He doesn't seem to be too uptight or too happy. He gets over bad and good equally as quick, and I like that about him.
I feel like it can't get worse, right? I mean,
well, it could, but I would imagine with the dysfunction of coaching, hell no, it can't. But
exactly.
with the injuries, you never know how it's going to go. But you can't. They're going to get either an offensive lineman or an edge rusher to get him the ball back. He'll be another year, like I said. It'll even slow down for him, slowing down where you got things going. Your mind slows down and your feet speed up. And I think that'll happen. I think that Trevor Lawrence is going to be. I've seen too many signs of his greatness for him, and over the course of his career, he even overcame. Honestly, at Clemson, they weren't exactly an outlandishly formations and different. He's still in the infancy of learning how to spread an offense and get it rolling. Doug Peterson will make sure you see all those boxes checked. I think you give him time, you'll see the best of Trevor Lawrence in the next couple of years.
So along those lines of you saying they won't be picking number 1 next year or in the top 3, you are down doing your show. We'll get specific on one question, and then I have one other place I want to go. The Houston Texans, I mean, just a bit of a mess right now. Have gotten rid of DeAndre Hopkins and J.J. Watt and the whole Deshaun Watson thing, but he's gone as well. A team where the not a first-round pick, I think it was third, was Davis Mills, took over last year. I actually called his first start last year. Is he the guy? Will they maybe trade for a Garoppolo? And what do they need to do in this draft?
First off, Mike, I don't think they will, because I don't think they want to slow down the Davis Mills opportunity. Now, let's say Mills goes out and plays average at best. They'll be in the Bryce Young sweepstakes next year, or whoever they think is the first right, they will. I think this for them is a chance. They saw, instead of Davis Mills like rookies sometimes do, Mike, their struggle early, kind of get a little bit better, and then they start to fade because it's a long season, right? Mills got better all year long. He's a great pure thrower of the football. High, and I know this sounds like we're writing a draft book, but he really is a high football IQ guy. And my favorite thing about him, Mike, during all the crap after that Buffalo game, he was horrible, right? When he was in Buffalo, I mean, bad. He never once made an excuse. He never once to the media, gave the pout, I confess he did it thing. He just kept working. And I like that. And he did it on a team that, quite frankly, Mike, that you and I might have been able to play a few snaps for, right?
How about it?
That's saying something. So I do think he is. I'm not sure he's that guy yet, but I think he's more than a guy. Does that make sense? And we got to give it a chance. He hasn't even started a full season. He only started 11 games at Stanford, but this is going to be, it's like Saturday moving day at Augusta. They expect this thing to move this fall and him to process information. They've got to get some players around him. I'd love to see him draft a receiver and an offensive lineman. Mike, when you got that many needs, you just don't draft a need. You draft the best guy, right? They need a tackle. They need they need to be better against the run. They need an edge rusher when you're playing zone that can disrupt when you're rushing 4. They could use corner help. They could use Kyle Hamilton. They could. And the running game's got to get. Other than that, they're really good, Mike. They got guys. But I think he can be a player, and I'm anxious to see his growth. I know he puts his time in. So I coached him at a camp when he was a freshman in high school, and they brought him up. It was a camp, a Top Gun camp. And Mike and Jess, he was better than every other guy there, and he was a 9th grader. Smooth and very unassuming and kind of under the radar guy. And here he is now with a chance, but they got to give him a help. But I do think he's got a chance. I don't know if he's a franchise quarterback. From what I've seen flashes, but I'm going to know more about him by about middle of October to what we see. I'd draft a quarterback in every draft if I was a team, like Belichick does, 4th round, 6th round. Right. You never know when it's going to be an asset. I don't think they're going to touch a veteran, or they already would have. And I don't think they want to slow the process down. And I know they're not taking a quarterback in the 1st round. Now, if there's Sam Howell in the 4th round, who knows, for competition, because right now it's Kyle Allen's the backup. I think that Davis Mills has a chance to elevate this year. I really do. I would not draft one in the first 2 or 3 rounds either this year. All
right, let me go one more again. You do morning radio, and so you obviously cover all sports. And for those that don't know, and Jess, I don't know if you know this either, along with being a basketball and offered in a ton of places. He was offered, or football, he was offered a basketball scholarship, was Sean, at USC and UCLA. Excellent basketball player. So let me ask one on that. The NBA playoffs going on right now. We'll see where they go. We got a couple of injuries with Middleton and Milwaukee and Booker and Phoenix. We'll see where some of this ends up. But I want to concentrate on the last question here because you mentioned Davis Mills and no excuses. Well, it seems to be what we hear out of Brooklyn. So with that ending and the Ben Simmons situation and Kyrie talking about the excuses of we haven't had a chance to gel, well, I'm sure you talked about that a bit. What were your thoughts on those guys?
Listen, Kyrie Irving is, I don't get into people, whatever they want to do vax-wise and all that,
Right,
that's on it. That's above my pay grade. You take care of you, I'll worry about me. I got enough trouble taking care of my damn self. But and he's a supremely talented guy. But it is ironic we haven't had a chance to gel. Well, no shit. Am I allowed to say that? No kidding.
Yes.
And part of it was self-inflicted. No matter whether you like it or not, it was. And we know Kevin Durant's good, but what an underachieving disappointment. Mike, if you'd have told me November, you and I had a bet, and I said, you know what? You're going to find with Harden there, who doesn't know how to close out and never has. He's a great scorer, but doesn't know how to close out. That if you told me those three were going to be on the same team and a couple veterans, that they were going to get swept in any playoff series with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving on their team, I'd have bet you anything that wasn't going to happen. Well, Boston opens up a can on them, they get eliminated. They are right now, they are in the living in the, I confess, well, what's Steve Nash? Maybe it was a little bit of him and the fans. And then Kyrie, talk about ifs. KD, well, if we'd have had a little more continuity and if this would have worked out and we'd have had, no kidding. And then there's Ben Simmons. I don't ever question people's mental health or where they are, Mike, because I don't know. And I far be it from me to know when he's sitting talking to whoever he's talking to get it. And I hope he gets it right. But I can tell you this, it feels to me from the sports perspective like he's afraid to get back on the court. And I guess I understand it. I mean, considering because the life mental stuff is far more important than hitting a jump shot. But it's almost as if that block is there. You know, the guy who can't putt from 3 feet and just can't make it. I think they're an excuse-making team, and I don't think that group will ever win a championship. And Harden going, watch now. Philadelphia ain't winning one either. And I hate to say that for the Sixer fans because I love their fans, and I know you do too. He'll score, but the commitment factor from him in the offseason, and he's going to get a max contract. So Brooklyn, a heavy disappointment, and I cannot believe with the talent that they were started running out on the court that we're talking about. They got swept 4-0 by the Celtics. Boston's underrated and really good.
Well, I knew you'd have an opinion about that, Sean. And we really do appreciate your time. Always great talking to you, my friend.
I know I overtalked it, but dude, I could talk for hours. And this is an honor for me to be on, and you know that. And I always appreciate you. Jess, thank you very much.
Oh, Jess, Sean and I have been friends for so long, and we've been on each other's shows once we stopped working together for so long. It's always fun to talk to him. I'm sorry you had to deal with some of the back in the day talk, back before A, you were born, and B, your parents were married, as you like to remind us of.
It was before my parents even met. But no,
God.
Mike, I like talking about Notre Dame football from the 80s because that's the last time Notre Dame won anything meaningful. It makes me feel a little connected to my alma mater.
Yeah. And Sean is obviously good with everything. Hell, when we were at ESPN, he would go on SportsCenter and do hockey highlights. I mean, he is so well-rounded in what he does, but I knew he'd like to jump in on the quarterbacks. But then I wanted to end because I knew he was a basketball guy as well, Jess, on what's going on in the NBA with the playoffs. I think one of the first and foremost, Lakers not even making the playoffs, and what a disappointment that is to the point of, and we'll get into more of the playoffs. We know Booker's hurt for Phoenix and Middleton, as I mentioned, hurt for the Bucks. So we'll get more into that, see what upsets still go on in the first round. But the Nets, Brooklyn Nets getting swept by Boston. Boston was a better team. I think we all know that. But there's a whole lot of head scratching. And you heard Sean going off on Kyrie and on Ben Simmons about how they have handled their situations.
Well, I just, it's so rich hearing Kyrie talk about not gelling. I mean, Sean already said it, but like, just dude, get vaccinated. Like the answer was there all along. Like it's good for public health. It's good for you if you get sick, which I think he was already in health and safety protocols in the winter. It's good for your teammates. It's good for everyone. Like there is not a single negative effect to it. You'll get to play at home before they change the rules now in the city of New York. So It's so frustrating, and it just feels like there's such a lack of self-awareness there.
I was somewhat amazed. And listen, I'm vaxxed. I know you're vaxxed. But as I've always said, if someone doesn't want to get vaxxed, that's their choice. But I mean, that's involved in what he said. I mean, so can you say, did he should have said after that, I'm the reason we didn't gel because I didn't get vaxxed again, which is his right to do. I mean, that's his choice. But then to say, well, they did and we didn't, I just, man, it just sounds like, and by the way, it just as Sean said, he is a great player, but wow, didn't need to hear that. And the Ben Simmons thing, listen, the whole mental health situation is a difficult road to go down. But what Sean said, I had thought as well. You just wonder if there's like in baseball, if it's the yips or, in another sport, if it's just something that where he feels good coming back, but there's just something holding him back because of how he's been kind of ripped on the court. He doesn't take a layup. He passes a ball. He won't shoot a three. If just all that is just so much on him, which maybe would go to the mental part of his game, but that's really holding him back.
But I think he's only said up to this point he's not playing because of his back, right? So
well, he did. He said he brought the mental part into it. I would try and find the quote that he said, but he kind of brought the mental part of it into it hurting his back. It sounded really weird, but again, I don't think people want to mess with somebody who says, though it is interesting that and listen, is there a difference of how we treat men and women with this, and should there be? Because a lot of people getting on Ben Simmons, right? A lot of people when Westbrook in LA said he didn't like that he was being called West Brick and his kids were hearing it in school, and everybody was just telling him, dude, then shoot better or get over it or whatever. But Simone Biles in the Olympics or Naomi Osaka in tennis, they talk about and everybody is like, oh, okay, we got to take a step back. But in the guys' part, it's get the hell back on the court or don't worry about it. Is there a double standard here that we're not addressing?
It's an interesting question. So I would say I think Naomi Osaka and Simone Biles probably did get a lot of backlash. I'm pretty sure that was documented, though it might not be from people that you and I follow on social media.
Could be. Okay, could be.
But I would say, like, if there is a double standard, there shouldn't be, because I think suicide rates are actually higher for men than for women, because men are less likely to talk about their feelings.
Right.
I'm being like overgeneralizing here a little bit, but like we should treat anyone who says that they have any sort of like they need assistance with their mental health. We should treat them all the same way, which is with empathy and compassion. And so if Ben Simmons doesn't want to play, whatever, I don't need to know about that. Like, it's really none of my business. I know, like, it's our jobs as people in media to talk about these things and have these conversations. But like, I truly, like, we should just be okay with players not wanting to play sometimes or not feeling like they can play sometimes, because I think it's really dicey to be diagnosing people we don't know with certain illnesses, which I've heard people in sports media do. It's dicey to be saying like, well, if he's so depressed, I wouldn't be I wouldn't be anxious if I made X millions of dollars. Like, okay, sure, whatever. Like, you probably would be. Like, we just don't really know everything, and we shouldn't judge or criticize. I think no matter whether it's a female athlete or a male athlete, anyone who says that they need help or they need to take a step back or whatever they need, like, we should just all be respectful of it. I think it's pretty easy to do.
I think bottom line, it's tough to get in somebody's head or chest, to get into their mind or their heart. Difficult to do. From an actual X's and O's standpoint, I think we can easily say, though, the Lakers and the Nets were two of the more disappointing teams this year from a basketball aspect, which is something, we would talk about. And as you said, people let people make sure they can deal with their mental health issues if they feel they have some. So I think the best way to end this one is podcast will come out before the draft. I love the fact now that you can bet on who gets picked where. I think, and what a Trayvon Walker from Georgia, what a rise he's made. He is now the favorite at minus 190 to be the number one pick overall. I mean, how long ago was Kayvon Thibodeau You know, in the beginning of the season that we talked about, he's sitting at plus 5,000 right now. Aiden Hutchinson then was the guy talked about all the time. He's at plus 225. So good on Trayvon Walker, man. All of a sudden, he's the favorite in this thing.
Yeah, are you looking forward to anything in particular from? I know you're going to the draft with Gojo, right? In Vegas. Is there like a meal you're looking forward to? You gonna like play roulette? Like, are you just gonna go to the draft and then come right back? Like, what are you doing this weekend?
I am a blackjack guy, Jess. I will be at the blackjack table. They will pull me away from the blackjack table long enough for me to go do what I'm supposed to do at the draft. Then I will be back at the blackjack table playing blackjack. That's what I like to do. So, I'll find my places to eat and all that. And I was there one time. Me and my wife went to see Elton John, which was very, very cool.
Yeah.
That was awesome. But, we're there from Wednesday to Friday. So I'll do the work I need to. I have some other things I need to do. But, yes, I will be sitting there. Hit me. I'm good. Hit me. Split them. Double down. I'll be doing all that stuff.
So you're gonna go to the table, and then as soon as you hear the you'll get up, run outside, see who's the pick is in, and then you come back to the black.
I'll talk about it. We'll talk about it a little bit, break it down, and then I have 10 minutes, before the next pick, and hopefully they use all their time.
Oh, and it always takes longer too.
It does.
Like, there's always a commercial, and then like have some guy walk up to the stage.
Yep.
Sometimes it's you, and they take their time, and everyone claps and they wave like So Meghan Markle wave at the crowd.
I waved like that when it was in Cleveland, and I made the pick for the Eagles. I waved like I was somebody, and I'm like, as I was waving, I kid you not, I thought, what the hell am I doing? Am I seriously waving right now? Wow. But
the crowd probably loved it.
But what a day for all these guys. A bunch of new millionaires we're about to have.
True that.